My name is Lucca, and for the past few years I've noticed that our family business discards many aluminum beverage cans a day. So I want to figure out a way to use those cans by melting them and casting them into something I could sell to make money off of. So for my star event this year, casting cans, I decided I would do that by making aluminum FCCLA napkin rings because it would foster family togetherness by promoting family mealtime. On a foundry, there are 5 main pieces: the foundry body, the foundry lid, the crucible, the blower pipe, and the blower tube. The first thing I had to do was figure out what to do, so I used the 5 steps of the planning process: identify concerns, form a plan, set a goal, form a plan, act, and follow up. The first step was to identify my concerns. I needed a way to melt the cans while using mostly recycled things and to not spend too much money on it. The next step of the planning process is to set a goal. My goal for this was to melt down the empty beverage cans from our family business and turn them into something useful. Next, I had to form a plan. I was going to build an aluminum foundry to melt the cans out of a metal bucket, plaster, a metal pipe, and a hairdryer as the blower, and I was going to use a cut-in-half propane tank as the crucible to melt the metal in so I could pour it into molds and cast the aluminum, and I was going to use charcoal briquettes as fuel. The next step of the planning process was to act, so I gathered up all the materials I needed to make everything, and I started by casting the plaster foundry bucket. I filled it with a mix of plaster and sand and put a smaller plastic bucket in the center to make it hollow. Once the plaster had cured, I took a small bucket out of the center and drilled a hole in the side to blow air into to make the charcoal burn hotter. Now that I had the foundry done, I made a blower by taping a 2-inch steel pipe to a hairdryer. And with that done, I made a crucible by cutting an empty propane tank in half with an angle grinder. Now that I had the foundry done, I needed to test it, so I put some charcoal in it and I turned on the blower in the foundry. When it had heated up, I started putting the cans in, and after a little while I had melted down a cardboard box full of metal cans into the crucible. I turned off the blower and took the crucible out of the foundry, skimmed the slag off the top, and poured it into an oil filter can. And once it was cool, I took it out, and now I had a big block of aluminum I could remelt into anything I wanted. After I had taken it out, I needed to figure out what I'm going to make with the aluminum, so I decided to make napkin rings with FCCLA written on them and cast those out of aluminum. I started carving a model out of a piece of old flooring I had lying around from our house. Once I had the model, I coated it in plaster, but when I took it out of the plaster, it came with a bunch of air pockets under where the plastic had been. So I needed to make a more simple shape so it wouldn't get air pockets. So instead of the letters FCCLA, I made a more simple shape of a star. This time, when I took the model out of the plaster, it came out with no air pockets, so I could remelt the metal and try to cast it in the new mold. I relit the foundry and put the old ingot of aluminum into remelt. Once it was remelted, I took it out and tried to cast it and in the mold. I took it out and cooled it in water. I also poured the rest of the molten aluminum into a bucket of water. Once it was sanded, I glued it to a ring as a star napkin ring. In this project, most of the things that I used were recycled. In total, I used reused metal and plastic buckets as the foundry body, an empty propane tank that I had lying around as a crucible, a thrift store hairdryer as a blower, and all the aluminum cans I melted down into everything. In total, I only spent $71.99 on this project, and I think I could easily make more than that by selling the things that I cast. I think this project was a huge success, even though I had some problems with the mold making. When I cast other stuff, I will remember to make less complicated molds. From this experiment, I learned that it is possible to make really cool things out of relatively cheap things while using things that would otherwise be discarded as trash. Thank you for listening.